Chapter 6. Meeting a Master. I turned my steps now toward the place where the yellow-skinned people lived. I mused over my strange encounter. We would know about that alien mind someday, I decided, but for the present, we could only wonder. Turning my mind to the inhabitants around me, I began learning new things, picking up fragments of thought and piecing them together. Each step that I took gave me a clearer overall picture of this world. There was definitely a connection between these impossible paradoxes and that outer mind whose life I had ended. That there were more, I did not doubt, although I had no reason for believing so. I did feel certain that we would have no further trouble that day. Whoever or whatever these might be, they would need time to plan before they could act. Presently, I saw one of the people with yellow skin, and I began touching minds. I found that their culture was different, their language not the same. Many understood the language I had learned, but only incompletely for the most part. Down the street, I saw a shop displaying foods, and I paused to survey with my senses. The smells were curious, the sights stranger. I soon found that there were several languages, closely allied, which were used by these yellow-skinned people. By the dint of some mental effort, I achieved a partial mastery of these. Then I felt capable of finding what we sought. I strolled casually to the store, observed the speech of the man before me, and asked for several items in his language. Again, I found my mental picture incomplete, for although these people knew so-called white men spoke their language in some cases, he was shocked to hear me speak thus. He answered with a hasty flow of syllables which I had difficulty following. Then, after a pause, he said quite distinctly, "Your pardon, please. I did not know you spoke my language. It was unexpected." I answered in the rather flowery expressions, indicating that it was an honor to speak to him and other such superfluities, then brought the conversation back to the food. I talked with this man and several others, finding myself quite popular. They asked me questions about myself, but I found little difficulty in answering them. I completed my purchases and left, bidding goodbye to those I'd met. Their friendship was not difficult to win, and was more genuine than that which I had purchased from the automobile salesman. It was then that I caught a fleeting thought from a man, but no more than this could I find. It was a reference which seemed to be yellow headgear or yellow hat, and had some bearing upon myself. Oddly enough, I couldn't follow this man, and I was slightly annoyed that he should have escaped me so easily. However, my concern was unnecessary, for I found him waiting for me at the next corner. "If you could spare a moment, honored sir," the young man said in faultless English. I studied him. He was a handsome youth, and obviously strong and well-conditioned. His dark eyes seemed wise, yet my brief contact with his mind revealed nothing except a mixture of bland good humor and tense expectancy. He could mask his thoughts well, but then a fragment came through. He was to invite me to see another person, one of extreme wisdom in his eyes. "Take me to whomever you will," I said. "I will accompany you." He was startled, but he covered it with a smile. "You know the mind," he said. It was a statement, not a question. "This way, if you please." We walked silently for half a block, entered a small doorway, and walked up a flight of rickety stairs. Then we walked down a dingy, dark hallway to a door at the end. Here he paused. He did not rap with his knuckles, but merely tapped the door gently with his nails. A hearty voice invited us in. The young man opened the door, and I followed him into a surprisingly cheerful room, realizing after an instant that it was not patterned after this earth. The young man who had guided me bowed to the figure seated in a chair and withdrew. The figure in the chair was impressive physically, his height approximately 7 feet, and his weight tremendous. As he rose to greet me, I saw he was supple and even graceful. His muscular yet somehow soft body was carried by him as though he was lean and athletic. His skin was quite brown, his hair dark and heavy, and set in the firm expanse of his face were two deep green eyes. These told me what he was, for his eyes had slitted pupils, and the mustache on his face was not affected, but was a natural sensory organ. He was of a race descended from the cat. "Yes, I am a stranger," he said. His voice was as I described, hearty, vibrant. "Well, I hardly expected this," I replied, smiling. "You are of the star system Lensen?" "I know not of this place," he said, shaking his head. "You know of the Union?" I asked. "I have heard," he agreed. "I come from a far corner of the universe. We, too, have what you might call a union. It's my belief that members of my race have contacted your union in the past." "Oh?" "We are the Watchers." Memory came then. These were the strange wanderers with a near pathological thirst for learning. Yes, they had heard of the Union, but they had use for neither Union nor code. They were a code unto themselves, for they gave fair measure for what they received, and they sought only food for their insatiable minds. Their lifespans were unknown, for none had died save in accident from the time they were known in the Union. One thing I knew. His was not the alien mind that I'd fought and conquered. His was kindly, yet distant, and unbelievably curious about me. He invited me to sit with him, then asked me if I cared to tell him about myself. "What would you like to know?" I asked. "Whatever you wish to tell," he said politely. "By word?" "By your mind, if you will." I knew then that he would bargain, that in exchange for whatever I might give him, he would offer what we wanted. He would take us from this world. This was escape. Almondo, nearly as curious as the Catman before me, watched and listened as I described our world, pictured our civilization, the Union, myself, the code, everything that I thought interesting. Then in detail, I visualized the voyage, the crash, and the incidents leading up to our meeting. The Watcher heard me to the end and then sighed, pleased. "Most interesting," he murmured. "Most interesting." He sighed again. "I will tell you something of myself." He could not but assume, I knew, that I was as insatiably curious as himself. I would have preferred to postpone the interview, but this might prove of value, so I waited. Perhaps some of my thought escaped, for the Watcher said, "I will just give you a sketch in words to save your time. I am here to observe. There are several incidents whose outcome is in doubt. I've been here for some time, awaiting them." Some time? His thought picture left me staggering. He pictured events from the dim past, eons before my birth. I saw things that I didn't really understand. Indeed, I even caught a glimpse of a star god in this vision. At least that's what I thought it was, but I couldn't say for sure. It was all so confusing. However, what I did realize was that the Watcher had been waiting several thousand of this planet's years. His incredible combination of patience and curiosity amazed me. "It is more or less in doubt as to whether this race will survive," he said. "A short time ago," he paused, "roughly 2,000 years ago, a member of my race contacted me. I told them I expected the outcome shortly, and they will no doubt return soon. We will gladly take you to some planet of your union. That is what you desire, is it not?" Do you have any idea how soon that'll be? As I said, I expect them shortly now, not more than 20 years, perhaps less. I realize it is, well, to your time, since this seems lengthy. However, there's no way I can contact anyone. It is perhaps disappointing, but it should be of comfort to you to know we will eventually rescue you. Yes, it is some comfort, I agreed. I tried frantically not to become discouraged, as I knew Almondo was listening to my every thought. What is your lifespan? The Watcher asked. About 400 of this planet's years, I said. I see. Well, unless something delays my friends, they will be here in time. Though, he paused, it's very hard for me to promise anything. I will do my best for you. Others may come for you before then. True, I assented. In any event, it's good to know there is one hope. Yes, I imagine it is, he agreed. No doubt you're lonely. My own isolation I am accustomed to. He stopped speaking and stared thoughtfully at the wall. I did come out of my seclusion at one time, mingling with some early men in a country called Egypt now. That was no doubt a mistake. Afterward, I was deified and worshipped as a god. However, I'm now considered a myth, although cats are universally attributed with long life because of me. He laughed softly. Also, I was much feared, and my fame, or infamy, spread throughout most of the world. Once I had to capture an inhabitant, principally to save his life, and I thought it wise to tell him who and what I was to prevent psychological complications. It did no good, though. When I finally released him, he fled in terror, feeling sure that I was planning to use him as food, with the result that the troll came into existence. The feline is rather common in the universe, I murmured. Yes, the Catman replied. I've planned to investigate that someday. Life forms are remarkably consistent. By vision alone, I could not have distinguished you from the natives of this planet. I decided to prod him just a bit in the hope of obtaining much-needed information. Do you know any life forms? I groped for the proper expression. Those that could perhaps... I understand what you mean, the Watcher replied. I should like to tell you, but at the present time I cannot reveal that information. I can give you something, though, which may help. It is my reason for being here. This planet belongs to another race, a race of rulers and principalities of the airs. The Earth is their property. He allowed this to sink in. I see, I murmured. Well, that will help, I'm sure. I sincerely hope so, the Watcher replied. I shall be interested in you, so do not hesitate to see me. Perhaps I can give you some minor assistance. He reached into the pocket of the short jacket he was wearing and withdrew a little gleaming disc. This will help to purify your food and drink. Merely leave it in a container with the food for a short time. He laughed when he caught my mental impression of what a short time must be. Only a few minutes. Thank you very much, I said, accepting the disc. This, indeed, we can use. He smiled graciously and walked with me to the door. I will keep in touch with you, I promised. Then I stepped into the alien world, far more alien than the one I had just left. I met no one in the hallway nor outside. Strangers passed me on the street, but of the young man, there was no evidence. It occurred to me that there might be more aliens on this planet. There might be some who we might not care to meet, and there might be others who would be friendly. I knew the reason why I had decided to come to this planet, and I suspected an even greater purpose motivating the Watcher, who had spent so many lifetimes on this insignificant globe. If there were others like the Watcher and myself, then this world had become a focal point for some reason. "I imagine you're right, Bach," Almondo flashed. "He is hardly here by chance alone." We will see, I replied. "I shall bring this food back now, I think." "There's no hurry," Almondo telepathed. "Everything is going quite well here." "Then I will not hurry. How's Jovian?" "Doing very well. Consciousness returned about an hour ago. I administered some nutrients intravenously and a sedative. Jovian dropped off to sleep almost immediately." "Well, that's good," I replied. "I shall return shortly." "Whenever you wish," Almondo flashed, lapsing into silence as I walked up the street. Because I was more familiar with this world, I was able to carry on with an ease I had not had the day before. I set to work purchasing things with a lavish hand: tools, electronic equipment, furniture, wire, meters, everything that I thought I might use. I knew little about technology, but I was depending on you to help me build some devices. Then I called upon the automobile salesman for a few necessary items, and he was more than willing to take care of them for me.